Hello, welcome to Tech Life Stories. Today I'm joined by Daniel Breston. Daniel has over 50 years experience in the ITSM, IT and DevOps and IT leadership world. He is semi-retired and he could talk a little bit about that in a bit. But he's a big advocate for mental health in IT, which I'm really keen to learn more about and the impact he's having on that. He's also a fellow for the British Computer Society, the Professional Institute of Service Management. He's an ex-board member of ITSMF, currently a blogger and a speaker. He's worked all across the UK, the EU, the US, degree in technology from the University of Houston, and a whole host of certifications in ITIL, Kanban, DevOps, and many more. Welcome to the show, Daniel. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Can I hire you to be my marketing team, please?
Did I do you justice?
Uh, Over justice, I think. Thank you, Con.
No, not a problem at all. Did I miss anything? That's what I want to know.
No, you didn't know. I would be too embarrassed to add anything.
Okay, fair play. I think what would be good for, I mean, look, I mentioned obviously 50 years worth of experience, which is fantastic. I know I don't know if, are you actually semi-retired or retired, but maybe talk a little bit about that and where you're at the moment.
Okay. Um, so when I was in high school in the United States, we had a choice of either doing really well in high school and thereby getting a place in college, which gave you a deferment of going to the Vietnam War, or not doing well in high school and going to the Vietnam War.
Okay, one option then.
Not that I'm against going to the Vietnam War because I was helping out as a young volunteer at Walter Reed Hospital in Washington D.C. But I wasn't quite ready to go to war, and a high school counselor suggested that I go and take a summer job in a company that had computers. And back then, the only computers we ever saw were either Lost in Space on television or Star Trek.
Okay.
And I said, okay, why not? Well, a 3 month summer job turned into a 53-year career.
Wow.
I, I turned around my grades enough to get offered a place at the University of Houston, where I worked at Texas Commerce Bank for 17 years, starting at the low level key punch operator and working my way up to uh, assistant vice president, data center assistant manager, and then Texas Commerce Bank got bought, and uh, the buying bank was a big New York bank, and they wanted to take on a new type of well, not mini, but not a mainframe computer from IBM and use it in all of their overseas branches. And they needed somebody to CIO that. So I became a CIO for high net wealth management and overseas branches for this New York bank, which is a fancy way of saying, Con, you're single. You have to agree that you're going to stay there 3.5 to 4 years. They're going to pay all of your bills. They're going to buy you a car. They're going to get you a house or a very nice apartment. And the location is Nassau, Bahamas.
How did that go down?
It took me about 25 to 30 milliseconds to agree. And for the next 4 years, that's what I did. I helped people introduce the IBM AS400, which I fell in love with, across the gambling community, health services, banking, across the Caribbean and in England, because that was our backup site, was in England. And at the end of the 4 years, I was taken on board by some people that used to work at Texas Commerce Bank that had moved to Bear Stearns, who was using the AS400 and some Unix computers to run 30 to 40% of the daily transaction volume of every exchange in the United States. So our fail over time at the best test that we did with the exchanges was 2.5 seconds.
Wow. Okay.
In 2.5 seconds, you can lose several million transactions. And we kept trying to get it down lower than that, but that was, quite difficult to do in the mid to early 90s. In the late 90s, I moved to England because while I was in the Bahamas, I met an English nurse. And after 9 years of freezing in Chicago in the winter, during the summer and spring, Chicago is a great place. In the winter, if you're born in the South, you die. So she looked at me and she went, "We're moving to England." And I went, "Yes, dear." It's one of the reasons why we're still married. And I moved to England, and UBS decided that they needed the AS400 for a bunch of stuff. So we did that for 4 years. And at the end of 4 years, like all good big programs, they let everybody go, and I became freelance. About that time, ITIL ITIL had taken off. Some people are surprised to hear that ITIL, the writings of ITIL and the things of IT service management, actually started as early as 1986. And it was at the same time as the various things of the Agile community were starting, like Scrum and extreme programming or peer-to-peer programming. All of those practices that we take for granted now started back in the late 80s, started to mature and coalesce in the 90s, and really went public and live in the early 2000s. And I got involved in that as a trainer, and then started writing about it and speaking about it at conferences. And that trend has just ended. And in between, I did some work in various countries. You asked me what my best piece of work was. It was probably working for an electronics firm where their issue is that they didn't understand the flow of work amongst all of their different IT areas. Every IT area had those boards, that all end in the word done. Yeah. But if you asked them what the word done meant, it was, "Oh, we gave it to somebody else." So the sponsor and I one day took all of the boards out of everyone's room and put them into a big conference room. And it was the first time that the teams had actually seen other teams' boards in relation to their boards. And he looked at them and he went, "Tell me what's wrong here." And they went, "Well, we have 6 dones." And he went, "Excellent." So he took an eraser and he erased dones down. And he went, "Done is when we give it to the customer and they've given us feedback through the service desk. And oh, by the way, the service desk isn't on here." Mm. And one of the things that I was trying to do with IT service management, or DevOps, because everybody was concentrating on dev and nobody was working on ops, was really simple. In any organization, the truth can be found in your service desk. They know the good people and the bad people in the organization. They know the good apps and the bad apps. They know the good suppliers and the bad suppliers. They know what makes customers angry, and they know what makes customers happy. and they know what makes staff happy or angry about the technology that they're using.
Mm-hmm.
So the best place for CIO or leader of any team, and now I'm using leader as a verb and not as a role, is to spend time in the service desk and look at the issues that they're finding. Because if you can fix those issues, the majority of your big issues are gone, and you
Yeah.
can start innovating, and you save a lot of money. So we were trying to get the flow of work between the time that people had a bright idea and the time that that bright idea was live, and the feedback that we were getting back again, so that you could get good experiences of customers or consumers of your technology. So that led to all different, different other different types of frameworks like service integration and management, or SIAM, or one of the topics that's bouncing around today, experience level management. So it's all this interaction and stuff. And I guess the mental health thing, which you mentioned, became important to me because, do you have the video that I gave you?
You sent me a Norwich City video, which actually I had seen before.
Okay.
And what I'll do, I haven't got it ready to play now, but maybe I can add it on at the end for our
Okay.
watchers
You can
to
ask people,
see.
we can give people the link to that. But basically what ends up happening is you watch this and you realize that every day around you, you have individuals that have an issue and you miss it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I had at various times in my life from 15 to 20 people working for me, for several hundred people working for me, to 1,000 people working for me across various locations, or working with me across several various locations.
Mm-hmm.
And what you now have to do is you now have to figure out a way of seeing that stuff, because one day one of those ex-employees walked over to me and said, "You're the best manager I've ever had in my life, except for those times when I wanted to take your head and pound it into a wall." And we started talking about the last part of that statement because that was concerning. And he said, you give us all of this stuff about value stream management, and Kanban, and post-it notes, and metrics that matter, and blah, 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 blah. But you don't see the pain that you're causing us by doing all of this stuff. And you don't see the separation between the agile teams and the service management teams, or the service management teams and operations. And we know that you know that it's there, and we know that you're not ignoring it, but you don't see it.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference between ignoring it and not seeing it. I mean, think of all the people that you walk by on the street. You don't necessarily notice all of them. You're not necessarily ignoring them. They just are part of your universe that you've decided to park someplace.
Yeah.
You can't do that as a leader. The mental health, the anxiety, the stress, the depression, the burnout, is I feel rampant in our community. And I'll give you a good example. I'll give you the simplest example. Was when I moved to the UK, the head of people management looked at me and she said, "On Friday, you were the assistant head of technology, a CIO, for one of the largest financial services organizations in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
On Monday, you're the same, but for a different financial services organization. On Friday, you had 10 days off and you could buy 5 more, even though you'd been at this organization for 10 or 15 years. Right now, you have 30 days of holiday and you can buy another 5. And she let that sit in. And she said, "Oh, by the way, you have to take at least 10 of those 30 at the same time. And when you leave the bank, you're not allowed to bring your laptop with you or your pager," I know, old technology, with you, to where you're going. We really want you to leave the bank and be on holiday, which was a new thing for an American. But to have all this time off and not call work or be part of meetings or be part of discussions or anything was a real wrench.
Hmm.
I did, you want me
Yeah.
to do what? So it was those types of moments where I should have learned about the anxiety and stress and depression that I was feeling and the burnout that I was feeling because I was always on. But I didn't, because in IT we have this, well, there's several stigmas. One, in IT, if you're not always on, then there's no reason for you to be in IT. The second thing is that the stigma is, if you raise your hand and say I have an issue, you're tarred, right? And what we need to do is we need to get rid of those two stigmas. We need to make a psychological place of safety for staff so that any type of techno stress, any expression of, of mental anxiety or issues is addressed, because if not, that person could hurt your organization. So
Yeah.
I think that encapsulates my who I am a little bit.
It more than does, and obviously, I want to. I've taken down some notes. I want to kind of pick away at some of the things you said. But whilst we're on the subject of mental health, let's stay on that subject, because I want to get your viewpoints on a few things. Because you mentioned, obviously, the people manager that mentioned to you about the additional days and leaving your pager and laptop at the end, etc. Did it take someone else to tell you what you? Yeah, it did. It took someone else to tell you to kind of take a break, recharge the batteries, should we say. Do you think a lot of us get kind of like so engrossed in our jobs that we don't see it sometimes? We have goals, we have targets that we are working to all the time, and especially as leaders, we are obviously demonstrating to our individuals that report into us that we are supposed to be at the top, and maybe that we're unbreakable for being a leader. But actually, I think sometimes that we need to show a little bit of vulnerability. We need to say, do you know what? We do need some time out. We do need to recharge our batteries. And I'd love to hear your thought process on that, if you don't mind sharing that with us.
Well, you can clearly see in my background that I'm surrounded by Batman.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a Batman fan since I was 4 or 5 years old. Contrary to popular belief, there was a Batman on television before Adam West.
Okay.
Um, I have seen those, though I wasn't there when they first came on. I've seen the black and whites when they were repeated. Um, but, through my life, Batman has always represented the person that's always there, always on, always ready to take on next,
Mm-hmm.
right? The Batman comics of the last few years have taken a slightly different turn. And that turn is, this has gotten to Bats, and he's starting to have real mental issues, and it's starting to affect his friends, and his friends are really becoming concerned about this. Okay, so Bat Dan, it's one of my nicknames that I can publicly say, had to learn how to turn off. Now, sometimes it's your wife coming over and slamming your laptop down.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's your boss coming over and taking your laptop and phone away from you and locking it in his drawer and using and saying the word, piss off, go away.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's having a vendor look at you and say, I understand you're stressed and I understand we're causing you problems and stuff, but you can't kill the messenger. And you have to pause and go, okay, you're right, I am killing you. I mean, there's some self-awareness that has to occur. And I think the higher up you go, it becomes a duality, Con. And you're a director. So you're going to be having anxiety, stress, depression, or burnout. But you can also very easily create an environment where those four, what I call the big four, exist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They know that the organization wants to do something and they don't appreciate their role in it, or they don't think they've got the right metrics to be able to measure what they do on a daily basis, to be able to say, I've helped. I've gone home and I've helped. I've made a difference today. I think the days of command and control, micromanagement, are gone. I think COVID kicked the world into a completely different type of leadership and work structure. And whether we want to agree with it or not, we're going to have to agree with it. We're going to have to understand that digital metamorphosis or digital transformation, the digital part's easy. You take two wires, you connect them together, you're on the internet, you've gone digital. Thank you very much. Take your bow.
Mm-hmm.
What did you transform?
Yeah.
Because now that you've got all these tools that are coming out left, right, and center at you, what are you really going to do with them? And why are you getting rid of the people that might be able to help you do something with them logically?
Mm-hmm.
So, I was, during COVID, at the age of 65, told, thank you very much. We appreciate your help through all the things that you've helped us with, but here's the barn, go away. I decided that what I was going to do instead was rewrite the definition of the word retire. And after a long conversation with my wife, we agreed that retire was going to be, retirement isn't stopping. It's not retiring from, I'm going to retire from the way I used to work, and I'm going to now work the way I want to work, when I want to work, who I want to work for, and where, and and some other things. So, people call me up and go, we'd like to hire you to do something. Okay, let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd like you to work with us 40 hours a week. Stop. I've retired from that.
Yeah.
I don't do the big 4-0 anymore. You want me to come and do a conference session for you, or you want me to come and do a workshop for you and stuff like that? Yeah, we can talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
You actually want me to work? Don't do that. So I think the mental health, it's difficult because as a board member of ITSM UK at last year's conference, we did a session where I stood up and I said, I'm an ex-CIO and I want to apologize for the anxiety, stress, depression, and burnout that I've created in various environments across the US, UK, and EU. And there was shock across the room because you never hear a person of role,
Mm-hmm.
significant role, apologize for what they've done. You've never hear someone go, I caused it and I've felt it.
Mm-hmm.
And for the next 90 minutes, the 120 people in the room and I discussed what that meant. What was happening in their organizations? How was it being addressed? They had well-being teams that were being ignored because nobody wanted to raise their hand, because nobody wanted to be tarred with the term that they might, be a little weak.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I think we're in a society now where we can be a little bit more open about how we're feeling, and we can talk a little bit more openly. Not, I wouldn't say every organisation works that way, but I know some of the organisations that we represent as a talent staffing partner, that there are you can have a voice, and you can be supported, and there are lots and lots of activities to do outside of the workplace that really engages the workforce, lots of training development. So I think some organisations are embracing the way that we should work and support our employees. Hearing you there talk about you standing up and obviously saying you apologise for all the anxiety and anguish you've caused over the years, it is brave. And would you have done that 20 years ago when you was working for an employer that maybe wasn't?
Hell no.
No, exactly. So it's probably a little bit easier now that you retire, but it's still brave to stand up and do that, right? At the end of the day, most individuals are paid by an employer. So
Yep.
they are working to that employer's values, missions, principles, and they generally will have to adhere to that, whether they agree to it or not, right? If they don't agree to it, the best thing to do is go and find an organisation that you want to work for that does agree with your values and missions. I just think that you mentioned micromanagement, and it really hit home with me because my first recruitment job, I was micromanaged. And do you know what? As a junior starting off in recruitment, it probably worked well for me. I probably needed that a little bit. But as time went on, I didn't need it. But the problem is that it was the only way I then knew how to manage was to be a micromanager. So when I first started management, I became a micromanager. And it only took some of my employees who I built up a bit of a rapport and relationship with to tell me how I was managing and how I could improve, for me to realise I didn't necessarily need to be an out-and-out micromanager. I could relax on certain things and work with my employees and build the relationship with them that they need. But I think sometimes at first we kind of, when you've worked for a manager, and maybe you've only worked for one manager, which I had at that time, that's all you know. So when you're then thrown into management yourself, you kind of look at someone you've previously managed you, and you think, all right, I'll work that style of management because I think that's the right thing to do. So I think when you said as well, talking about rewriting what retirement looks like, it was great to hear that. I've got my father and my father-in-law who have retired over the past few years, and I think one of them, my father-in-law particularly, literally just stopped. One day was working, one day not, and it didn't work.
No.
It drove him crazy. Whereas my dad, he continues to work a little bit at his pace, and I think that works for him. It's keeping him young still, it's keeping him on his toes, but he chooses it in his own time, like you mentioned you did as well. And I think that is the right way to go about it. I think working one day and then stopping the next day, I'm not too sure that there's the right balance. It depends. You might have lots of hobbies where you're probably looking forward to getting rid of work and you want to continue with those hobbies. But I think in most part, I think it's good to have a little bit of continuation. And also, if you've got, I suppose you've got a passion for technology, you've done it for 50 years, you've got so much to give back, you should give that back to the community. And by doing podcasts like this, you're doing that. So I thank you for that. It'd be really interesting to hear, because the story you got up to with your employment when you come to the UK, you mentioned UBS and the 4 years you spent there, but can you talk to us a little bit more about some of the other employees you work with in the UK, whether that was permanent or freelance, and what it was like working for them, and some of the maybe transformation type projects you worked on and the significance of those?
There's some things I can't tell you because of NDAs.
Sure.
Okay, so I can't mention the who, but I can mention the what.
No problem. Oh, I'm happy with the what.
Okay, so you're a bank that has branches throughout Europe. The branches in each country are self-regulated to themselves, but then they also have a link to home office. And the problem with some of the banks was there was a time in their recent history when I walked in where every senior individual in the organization had a how should we say Russian mentor
Okay.
who actually was the one who made all the decisions. So when Russia left and all of a sudden they were on their own, they had learned command management, command and control management, and that's what I continued. It was strange for me to have to learn the key code to the head of development or the head of ops or the head of the service desk or the CIO's door, which was a steel door.
Mm-hmm.
And if you walked into the CIO's office, his office was just a bunch of papers because he accepted every meeting invitation. So if you looked at his calendar, he had hours and hours and hours of meeting invitations that he'd accepted. But of course, he couldn't go to all of them. So he took all the minutes and he tried to read them all, which was an impossible task. And it took me 2 months to get him to the point to where, A, don't go to a meeting unless you're actually going to contribute something. And B, when you're in the meeting, they're so used to the way that you've been, you have to be the last person in the room to actually make an opinion. If you're the first person in the room to make the opinion, and you're the highest ranking person in the room, every other person in the room is going to take your opinion.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the last person in the room to make an opinion, you now are in a learning situation. You can hear what others think, and you can adopt and adapt and try to support them. And it took him a while to get to that point. One day, Peter walked into the lean IT office that we were creating. It's a combination of IT service management, lean, and DevOps. And he said, I've cleared 2 hours from my calendar. What should I do? And I said, well, what do you think you should do, Peter? He said, you have taught me. I need to go and be with the service desk. So off he went. The lean IT team looked at me. They were young individuals, and they kind of looked at me, and I went, hold on, he'll be back in less than 2 minutes. They cut their head, and less than 2 minutes later, he walked back in. And he said, Daniel, could I talk to you outside for a second? I said, absolutely, Peter. What was the first question he asked me?
Hit me with it.
Where's the service desk?
Mm.
He'd never been. He'd worked at the bank for over 20 years, and he'd never been to the service desk. He didn't know where the service desk was.
Wow.
So I took him to the service desk. Now, the service desk manager, when you walked in, there were just 8 rows of desks, 4 desks in a row, and at the very end of the big room was the service desk manager, who somehow leapt over those 8 rows because she recognized who the individual was that I was with, and she was right there to greet him. And I said, it's all right, he's just here to look. And in the corner was one person, and he had a box of address labels, a box of envelopes, and those little security cards that you used to put inside of laptops to connect them to networks. And he'd take a security card, put it into the envelope, label it, drop it into a basket. And when it was full, he'd take it to the post room. And the CIO went over to him, and this employee had no idea who this guy was. He just knew who I was. And I didn't understand the language that they were speaking. But apparently, the conversation went along, what are you doing? And the answer was, oh, the stupid CIO. He's got this rule that if you work inside our main headquarters, you're fine. But if you work outside the headquarters, nobody trusts you. So you have to have this security token. So I spend my day sending out 500 tokens on average every month to employees all across our community. And Peter picked up his basket, walked over to a trash can, threw them away, asked the service desk manager to get him to a desk where he could handle phones and train him up on that and to stop doing this stupid thing, which he had done. And the employee looked at him and said, and who are you to tell me this? And he said, well, I'm the stupid CIO. Now, most CIOs or some CIOs would have fired him on the spot.
Yeah.
Peter recognized that what he needed to do was he needed to walk around the bank, and that's what he got really good at, was walking around the bank and seeing two things. One, what other stupid things that he asked people to do that were no longer relevant? And two, how was technology helping or hindering people so that his teams could change the way that they were working to where what they were creating were helping people and not hindering them anymore.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was a big lesson. And I think that lesson I've tried to do in several organizations. In some organizations, it works as long as I'm there. In some organizations, they've continued it. Because technology, at the end of the day, is an enabler.
It is. And hearing you talk there brought back some memories of me, because I've been working in tech recruitment for 25 years now. And for me, when I first started recruiting into the technology world, IT departments were in a corner somewhere, out the way, weren't really part of the business. It was kind of hidden away in a cupboard. Didn't want to be seen. Whereas fast forward 25 years, I would say technology is at the forefront of every organisation. Most service desks are integral, and the rest of the technology is integral to the business. So they are on the same floor as everybody else if they are on a working environment. So for me, I love the fact that now technology is at the forefront of most organisations. What that's meant is that for me, the communication skills of individuals now has to be second to none. Before, they might have been able to get away with being in a corner, not being seen. Whereas now, I think because they're at the forefront of organisations, the communication skills of an individual needs to be really good, because they are talking to users day in, day out. They might be sitting next to a user or behind a user. So what are your thoughts on the communication skills that technology individuals need going forward compared to what they were in the past as well? Do you agree with my kind of theory there?
I agree with the theory that there's this image that IT was always someplace else and that IT doesn't know how to talk to the rest of the organization that they're a part of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I disagree that it's just us. How many employees volunteer on their own, go, hey, you know what? During my coffee break, I'm going to go down to accounting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because that would be the most boring place, potentially, or legal, to go, to hear these guys with these pieces of paper and, what are they, long contracts and okay, doing. Okay? So I don't think we're unique. I don't think IT people are unique in trying to talk to people or feel like they're part of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's my first statement. I do think that we talk about the wrong things when we open our mouth. Okay, we talk about the megabits of the network connected to the blah 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 of the blah 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 and the blah 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 and all the different things that it can do, or what Paul Wilkinson calls the shiny stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you've read The Phoenix Project by Gene Kim and company,
I can't say I have, I'll be honest with you.
it's the seminal book of DevOps. It's about 12 years old. And one of the things that happens halfway through the book is the interim head of IT and the head of security, who's had a mental breakdown and now come back, goes to the different department heads and asks two questions. What do you want to do in the next quarter, and what are your obstacles?
Mm-hmm.
They write down that. They write down the obstacles. They give no solutions. That they don't say anything except clarification on what they've been told. And at the end of that round of 6 interviews that they did, they go back into IT and they look at all the different things that they're working on. And they go, this is going to help us. No idea how this fits into anything that we're doing. We're going to stop it. Okay? And they do this round of questions every other month. What are your goals? What are your obstacles? Now you've got this rolling strategy session that's matching what the organization wants to do.
Sure.
And all of a sudden, technology is an enabler to the organization.
Mm-hmm.
They're only doing what they should be doing to help the organization do what it wants to do.
Yeah.
And they become a team. The flow of work is not in IT. The flow of work is from the organization out to the customer.
Mm-hmm.
And IT is just a piece of paper or stapler or phone that the organization uses to get their work done.
Yeah, okay. I agree on that.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and I agree. And talking about let's stay on that subject a little bit, because I've had quite a few individuals come on the podcast recently and say that service management, particularly, you don't necessarily need to have a technical background, an IT background. The IT skills can be taught. It's the service communication type skill sets which really come into the forte. What do you think about that?
Everybody has one of these.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, then, you're an IT professional.
And just for our listeners, in case they're not watching it on a video, you're holding up a phone, yes?
I'm holding up a phone. Okay? I turn it on. I turn it off. I install apps. I delete apps.
Mm-hmm.
I put upgrades on. I take upgrades off. I look at messages. I talk to people. I interact. I connect. I do everything that a technology person in the digital age now does, because most products are packaged from other people. You know, a lot of the stuff that people are doing today, yeah, you might have an in-house development team, but from a user perspective or service management perspective, you're not really involved in that. You're there to help the organization do a service.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all organizations are there to do a service. There's not an organization, public or private, that isn't there to do a service. If you're not there to do a service, what are you there for?
Sure.
Okay? Even if you create a product, a hard product, that's a service to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You're giving that to them to do something. So the management of that service is an organization-wide goal and opportunity. what the IT service management community has to do is figure out a way to make the technology part an enabler to the rest of the organization to provide the service to their customers or the staff inside the organization. So, do you need to be able to sit at a mainframe and code, or sit at a new type of computer thing in code, or do AI coding as an IT service management person? No, because most of the stuff that you're going to do already has all that into it.
Yeah.
There's lots of tools that are coming out now that that have the capabilities of AI and all the other marketing words that are coming out now. The question is the biggest role that an IT service management person can do, or two biggest, is, what are the problems you're trying to solve with this tool?
Mm-hmm.
And how are you going to know that they're solved? Okay. The next thing that the IT service management person needs to help the organization do is, how many times do you pick up a newspaper or read a website of news and you see an issue which has a technology based bad story around it over the last 2 weeks? Right? Grocery stores have had technology issues. Places that you go and buy food from have had technology issues. Okay? People have technology issues. Guys, things break.
They do.
Okay? The question is that, are you in a position to be able to test that things break and what to do about them, not only to get things unbroken so that customers can continue to do what they need to do, but that the right types of communications come out.
Mm-hmm.
So business continuity, the practice of keeping your business in business, is usually seen as an IT skill. It's an organization skill. Okay? If you go to the Business Continuity Institute, they'll give you all kinds of free tools to be able to help you. But one of the things that they challenge you on is that, yes, your technology is part of your organization, but there's lots of parts of your organization. Okay? So, I think people don't take advantage of the cloud enough, because you can create playgrounds in the cloud that are very cheap, but that allow you to learn how to do things like business continuity to an advantage to your organization. Because let's face it, if you read an article about, we had an issue, but within 5 minutes our website was correctly telling you what the problem was, and we were telling you when we were going to come back up again, and we were communicating with people in a forthright way, and we were letting people know exactly what the impact was to them, and we came back up when we were supposed to come back up, you're going to stick with that organization because you feel like they were honest and transparent, and they have a clue as to what the heck they're doing.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you go to an organization and all they do is keep telling you, we have no idea when you're going to come back up and good luck, you're going to leave that organization.
True. Very true.
Okay. So, technology is there to help you make your business better, help you transform.
Mm-hmm.
You have to take advantage of that.
Yeah. No, I agree with what you're saying there, and I think as a business owner myself, technology is not at the forefront of what I do. It's a small business, but I have my own business continuity plan. I have to as a business owner, right? Technology is part of that, but if you ask me, it needs to be a owner managed or board level kind of decision making, which includes technology as part of it. Another thing you mentioned cloud. Did you say cloud playgrounds?
Yep.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I haven't heard that terminology before.
The cloud is a great playground. Let's face it. When you go into the cloud, you're playing. You're putting your stuff into it to be able to stop building crazy data centers and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But you're also taking advantage of their skill set, because no matter how much money you throw at your security team, the cloud security team is always going to be better.
Okay.
Okay. And depending on what you want to do in the cloud, you can actually do a lot in the cloud for very little money. And I'm talking about pence. Okay. So if you want to create a development environment, or if you want to create an environment that looks like what you're getting ready to release out into the real world, or if you want to take a bunch of users through a continuity situation, you can do those types of things and not spend a lot of money, and actually not spend a lot of time creating them. Because if you work with any of the 5 big cloud vendors, they'll help you do that. The last thing they want is for a customer to go out of business.
Of course I do.
So they want you to be in business. They're going to help keep you in business. So you need to take advantage of vendors.
Hmm.
Okay. I think what a lot of people miss is that a lot of what you do in your organizations now, you need your vendors. So you don't include vendors into your um, continuity plan. You keep it to just what happens if something happens to us. Okay. And what you need to do is you need to extend that. What happens if British Telecoms goes down and has an issue? What happens if water floods into your location? I mean, you're not a water company, you're a recruitment company.
Yeah.
Okay. What happens if, all this, different things come down? So you need to look at your, what happens if a vendor can't supply us something?
Hmm.
Okay. So it's like the A team. You always need to have a plan B. Now, you're not going to have a plan B for everything, because nobody has that much money, not even Musk. Okay. But at least you should have a plan that lets you know that you don't have a plan before you have to admit it in a crisis mode. Because then you can actually start to communicate with your customers. In this type of event, actually, we're going to be down for a little while. So let me tell you how we're going to help you.
Hmm.
So it's that type of discussion, I think, that service management can bring to the table if people are willing to listen.
Yeah. You made some really interesting, valid points there. Um, I think Mr. Musk might disagree with your comment there, but but yeah, I think having a viable backup plan is critical. It's needed, right? Do you think AI going forward can be part of that plan? And what are your thoughts on AI and how it's going to impact the world from your take? That'd be interesting to hear.
So first of all, right now, a lot of people in IT are worried about the impact of AI.
Hmm.
So mental health, stress, depression, burnout are all prevalent because of artificial intelligence. And the biggest reason is that there's this rumor that it's going to get rid of people. Okay, so let's talk about that. So
Please.
I'm going to take a view here, and I'm going to start the view with the same view that a friend of mine, James Finister, who's very big in the IT service management world, but also is the AI ethicist. And we all agree, or a number of us agree, that AI is good. AI
Hmm.
has a use. AI has a purpose. Okay, as long as you recognize the fact that there's a reason why it's called artificial intelligence, because A, you don't know what that intelligence has been grown on. So imagine a kid that's gone to a school that didn't teach them good math skills, didn't teach them good reading skills.
Hmm.
But this is the person that you're going to rely on to run your company. Okay. So You don't know where the AI has been grown up from, and you don't always know all the different things that kid or person or AI tool is going to do in various situations. Okay? So as long as you're willing to spend time monitoring that AI as it comes into your organization, governance and risk, okay, you have a chance of benefiting from it. Now, is AI getting better, and will AI continue to get better? Yes. Is AI going to replace some people in some roles? Yes. Is AI going to be able to get rid of everybody in IT service management teams? No. At the end of the day, AI has no context. AI doesn't have the communication and empathy skills to be able to tell a 79-year-old person why her smart meter has run amok. Okay? In such a way that you don't lose that person as a customer.
Yeah.
Okay? So, I think most of the people that are honest in the AI community are saying we're there as helpers, we're not there as replacers. Okay? If you have challenges in your work, especially in the repetitive task part, AI is a great way to help people no longer do the repetitive stuff, thus allowing your people with knowledge, because they've been in your organization for a while, to become part of the innovation group and innovate your company and improve your company. Okay? What I've seen organizations do lately is they put in an AI tool, they get rid of all their knowledge, and then they hire them back at twice the rate.
Yeah.
Now you're happy. Sorry. I'm happy because they might hire me at a really good rate. Okay. But it's nonsensical. I mean, it's non-sustainable.
Yeah, look, I actually agree with everything you said there. I don't think it'll be a replacer. I don't. I think it's a helper. I think it's gonna, like, for example, I can imagine in, and maybe it's already doing this, and you could tell me, but in like service management, I can imagine someone phoning up the help desk, and they'll be talking to AI, and they'll say what their issue is, and AI will either tell them what they think is the issue, or they'll say, "I will pass you on to someone on the service desk to fix the issue." I think it will be that eventually, but I don't think it will replace a service desk individual, or service management individual, should I say? And look, even in the recruitment world, we use AI, right? It's great for social media posts to start a social media post and put together some context around it. What I've noticed is that it's, like you said, it's someone else's brain, right? Or so-called brain. So if I ask AI to write me a 200-word social media post for LinkedIn around the transformation of ITSM, it will do that for me. But I don't like the way it words it. So I will have to then reword it to the way I would like the way I would like it to be communicated. So I think you still need some a human touch to bring the best out of AI, if you ask me. So yeah, I think AI is definitely here to stay. I think it will be a supporter across the IT industry. I don't think it'll be a replacer either. You want to say something?
Organizations also have to be careful of, AI is fed on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands and millions of documents and stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the stuff that it gives you back could be liable for copyright issues.
Yeah, true.
Okay. So you need to have a way of making sure that what you're getting ready to publish that AI is giving you isn't about to land you in court.
It's a good point. Very good point. And that's why you need that human touch, right, to fill that out. Yeah, 100%. Whilst we're on AI, I mean, we're talking about the future of technology. Where do you see the future of kind of the ITSM world? Do you see it changing much more than where we are today with it?
I think service integration and management is going to take off because you
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to integrate vendors into your digital world.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to see more enterprise service management because the organization now relies on the technologies and skills of service management throughout the entire enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going to start seeing service management as courses in universities, which is always a good thing. I think you're going to see service management and AI start to uh, collaborate and cooperate with each other so that when people talk to a chatbot, the chatbot actually gives them sensible things to do, to try first.
Mm-hmm.
And then if that doesn't work, then the chatbot goes and gets somebody that can actually help them.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be, a lot of changes in the way bots work
Mm-hmm.
and, stuff occurs, both internal to organizations and external to organizations. I think that people in service management are going to move a little bit away from service level agreements and move closer to experience level agreements because it's all about the consumer. Whether it's internal or external, I don't care, but it's about the consumer and how they feel about what the organization is doing. And I also think that service management is going to be somewhere very close and high up in the organization's environment, sociable, and governance, or ESG, or sustainability, if you look at the UN model uh, aspects, because organizations, no matter their size, have a role to play in trying to keep their communities uh, better, safer, and happier
Mm-hmm.
of some sort. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and that, goes back to the mental health things of being able to have staff that, if they need help, they can get help um, without necessarily impacting your organization or impacting their careers. So I think service management is going to have a role in playing all of that. There are some significant individuals in the service management community that are pressing that, which makes me happy because A, they're a lot younger than I am, so they're able to take on all this new stuff faster than I am. But B, they're looking at service management and the way that they're looking at service management isn't from the process and tool point of view, but they remember that it's people, process, tools.
Yeah.
And it was written in that order. And that order really should never change.
Yeah. One thing that stood out for me that you mentioned there was experience level agreements instead of service level agreements. What do you mean? Can you elaborate a little bit on that, just so I get a better understanding of that?
Several years ago, British British Airlines,
Mm-hmm.
had a problem. And from a service level agreement point of view, they were back up within the 2 hours.
Okay, that's good,
How did
isn't
the
it?
customers agree about British Airlines performance? How did the staff agree about British Airlines performance? Because 2 hours is a lifetime. To not be able to have your planes land where it's supposed to be, have hundreds of people all of a sudden stuck about not being able to leave or not leave in a worldwide way.
Hmm.
So, the operation was a success, but the patient died. Okay.
Okay.
Experience level agreements get you to start focusing on the fact that the operation should be the success. And yeah, okay, sometimes you'll lose the patient, but the patient would really prefer that that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So, how do you make people at least agree that you have a problem and you're aware of that problem and they're going to be impacted at that problem, but you're going to help them?
Hmm.
I mean, that's the trick of experience level agreements and experience level management.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, is to really put people at the focus point of the stuff that you're doing. Okay, service management is looking at value stream mapping and management. The very first thing you do in a value stream map is you put the customer onto a piece of paper or a mural board. If you can't define the customer, you can't map the flow of work that is going to help that customer. The same with experience level management. If you can't define the customer or consumer of what it is that you're trying to do, then how do you know whether or not the experience they're going to have of the service that you're doing is going to meet their needs? Because if you
Hmm.
can't answer that question, they're going to go someplace else.
Yeah. True. Very true. It's good. Well, it's really good. Look, I think it's maybe already part of some SLAs that some organisations have, but I like the way
Yep.
you rephrased it as its own entity, as a experience level agreement. So yeah, I think it depends on the organisation and where that sits effectively within it. Um, I'm a
And you
little
need to follow Alan Nance,
Alan Nance.
Nance.
Who's Alan Nance?
Who's Alan Nance? Well, there wouldn't
Smile
be
on
a
your face
service
there,
man,
so I like that.
there wouldn't be an ITSM community without Mr. Nance.
Okay,
Okay, and I'll
I
leave it
will
at that.
look him up. I will look him up. I'll make contact. I might even try and get him on the podcast as well.
Okay.
See if we can get some insight from him as well. Look, I'm quite conscious of time because we've gone over our hour, but I suppose
Yep.
I know you mentioned we haven't really touched on a lot of your personal life. I know you mentioned you met your wife and you come over to the UK and you've been here for a while now. But obviously now you're semi-retired and you spoke about some of the stuff you're doing still work-wise. But what do you get up to outside of the work life?
Well, you and I both support the same charity, Demelza,
We do indeed.
and I want to thank you for what you've donated to or will donate to Demelza.
I've agreed to
Okay.
donate. Yes.
Demelza, for those of you who don't know, is a charity that supports children that are basically not going to have a long and happy life, and helps their families throughout Kent, which is the county that I live in. We live in, um, and I work in their bookstore every Saturday. So I meet people from all over the southeastern part of Kent, or south northeastern part of Kent. Um, so we're a great bookstore. Thank you very much. There's gardening. Living along the Kent coast means that there's places to walk and see, and the scenery always changes. And there's the Kent Downs to go to. I have a 7-year-old dog that still thinks she's a 6 months old puppy,
Sounds like my dog.
and there's just it's amazing that retired people wake up, and when they go to bed at night they go, "Doggone, we did a lot of stuff."
Yeah. It's good. That's the way I think it should be. I think a lot of people think once you retire, you're sitting at home all day watching TV, and yeah,
Daytime television would just kill me.
yeah. Well, I think the way you've describes retirement is the right way, and what you're doing is fantastic. Not just still keeping your yourself involved in the tech communities, but also what you're doing outside of your work with the Mills, particularly. The Mills is a charity close to my heart as well. I've been supporting them for the past 5 years. So, look, I want to thank you very, very much for your time today. It's been fantastic having you on. I could talk to you for hours on end. We wouldn't run out of time. You've got such a breadth of history, and I really want to say thank you for sharing that with us today.
Oh, thank you for the opportunity, Con.